In the early 1970s, the world of aviation was a realm apart, a chapter of history marked by an ambiance and culture nearly unrecognizable today. Airports, buzzed with a sense of novelty and luxury, a far cry from the routine travel hubs of the modern era.
When you've got worries, all the noise and the hurry seems to help, I know. Downtown, just listen to the music of the traffic in the city. Linger on the sidewalk where the neon signs are pretty. How can you lose? The lights are much brighter there. You can't forget all your troubles, forget all your cares. So go downtown. Things will be great when you're downtown. No finer place for sure downtown.
Which is why, when a man, seemingly just another business traveler, made his way to seat 18E and handed a note to Florence Schaffner, the flight attendant aboard Northwest Airlines Flight 305, she perceived it as just another unsolicited advance, tucking the note away unopened. Little did she know, this discreet exchange was the beginning of an event so audacious it would etch itself into history as one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. On a cool, overcast afternoon in Portland, Oregon, the Portland International Airport was bustling with the usual pre-Thanksgiving travel rush. Amidst the travelers, a nondescript man in his mid-40s approached the Northwest Airlines counter. It was November 24, 1971, a day that would become etched in aviation history. The man, who appeared calm and unremarkable, approached the counter. Identifying himself as Dan Cooper, he purchased a one-way ticket for Northwest Airlines Flight 305 to Seattle. The ticket, costing just $20, was paid in cash, a common practice at the time. As Flight 305 prepared for boarding, there was nothing unusual about its routine. Dan Cooper boarded the Boeing 727, blending in seamlessly.
Good afternoon. This is the captain speaking.
He took his seat, 18E, aboard the aircraft, which was only about one-third full. He drank a bourbon and smoked a cigarette. As the plane taxied to the runway, preparing for takeoff, Cooper handed a note to flight attendant Schaffner, who was sitting in the jump seat at the rear of the plane.
Miss, you better look at that note. I have a bomb.
As the gray skies of Portland loomed overhead, a young flight attendant named Tina Mucklow, the newest hire and the lowest-ranked flight attendant for Northwest Airlines, was diligently fulfilling her role in the galley of Flight 305. As the plane prepared to depart, Tina joined Florence at the rear of the aircraft, ready to buckle into their jump seats. But then, a deviation from the ordinary. Florence abruptly stood up, leaving her seat to join a passenger in the last row. This was not standard procedure, especially at the brink of takeoff. Tina watched, puzzled, as Florence motioned towards a piece of paper she had dropped. It was a note, stark in its message. "Miss, I have a bomb here, and I would like you to sit by me."
No funny stuff, or I'll do the job.
The aircraft throttled down the runway, soaring upward into the storm-laden skies, embarking on its brief but fateful journey. Mucklow instinctively reached for the phone beside her and told the pilots what was happening.
We are being hijacked. This is not a joke.
Are you serious? What does he want?
Then she approached Schaffner and the passenger. He had a briefcase on the seat beside him. Schaffner had just finished transcribing his demands. $200,000 by 5 p.m., 2 front parachutes, 2 back parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting on the ground in Seattle. As the plane gained altitude, Schaffner stood to take the note to the cockpit, and Mucklow took her place beside Cooper. From that moment on, she was the man's point person, relaying messages over the interphone back and forth between him and the cockpit. The flight to Seattle only took 30 minutes, but air traffic control kept them circling the airport in a pattern for nearly 2 hours. while government agents on the ground scrambled supplies to meet Cooper's demands. Lightning flashed outside the windows. Mucklow says she later learned they were in a holding pattern over the water to keep the plane and the people inside it from raining down on the people below if the bomb went off. Northwest Orient Flight 305 made its descent into Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. On the ground, a tense atmosphere enveloped the airport, where authorities were scrambling to meet the hijackers' extraordinary demands. The aircraft taxied to a remote section of the tarmac, isolated from the airport's bustling activity. In response to the hijackers' demands, the FBI had quickly mobilized, rapidly collecting all the necessary items. In exchange, Cooper upheld his end of the bargain. The 36 passengers, oblivious to the true nature of their delay, were released, stepping into the cool, damp air of the Seattle evening. With the passengers off the plane, the hijacker issued new instructions to the crew. The destination was now Mexico City. The flight was to be conducted at a low altitude of below 10,000 feet, with the landing gear remaining extended, flaps set at 15 degrees, and a reduced airspeed. Flight 305, now stripped of its passengers and carrying the ransom, the parachutes, and the hijacker, prepared for takeoff. At approximately 7:40 p.m., the aircraft ascended once again, disappearing into the murky Pacific Northwest sky. As the aircraft flew over the rugged terrain of the Pacific Northwest, the pilots evaluated the flight's feasibility. They realized reaching Mexico City with these constraints was impractical. Fuel consumption at the lower altitude and slower speed was too high. After discussion, a new destination was agreed upon: Reno, Nevada. Meanwhile, a discreet military operation unfolded high above the Pacific Northwest. 2 F-106 fighters, along with a Lockheed T-33 trainer diverted from an Air National Guard mission, were deployed in pursuit. Then, in a defining moment, Cooper issued a unique request to lower the aft stairs of the aircraft while still in flight, an unprecedented maneuver never before attempted in commercial aviation history. The cabin was filled with the cold rush of night air. He instructed Mucklow to join the rest of the crew in the cockpit.
Downtown, just listen to the music of the traffic in the city. Linger on the sidewalk where the neon signs are pretty. How can
Then, in a moment that would etch itself into the annals of mystery and criminal lore,
you can forget all your troubles, forget all your cares, so go downtown. Things will be great when you're
Cooper stepped off the stairs and into the void.
When he got on a plane in Portland, Oregon last night, he was just another passenger who gave his name as D.A. Cooper. But today, after hijacking a Northwest Airlines jet, ransoming the passengers in Seattle, then making a getaway by parachute somewhere between there and Reno, Nevada, description on one wire service: master criminal.
As I say, there's no way of knowing when he jumped. After the door come open, he may have stood there 15 minutes waiting for the proper spot to come up that he could have had marked in advance, but summation.
Are you figuring or going on the assumption there might have been an accomplice along on this?
No way of knowing. There is logic that indicates that this man...
What came next was the largest manhunt in the history of the United States, an extensive and exhaustive search that spanned both air and ground. Local and federal authorities mobilized a massive operation. Teams scoured the suspected landing zone, navigating the rugged and often impenetrable terrain. Helicopters buzzed overhead, while agents on the ground sifted through the underbrush, all in search of any trace of the elusive hijacker or the stolen money. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the search yielded little more than frustration and unanswered questions. And by the spring of 1972, the active search operations had largely concluded. The FBI, alongside local authorities, continued to follow up on leads and investigate tips, but the momentum of the initial manhunt had faded.
Judging from the facts available about the parachutes, are you reasonably sure that a safe jump could have been made?
Definitely. There are several law enforcement officers here who belong to or have done some skydiving, and at that speed and altitude, no problem.
He either got away, or else he sure made a big hole in the ground up there.
There are many investigators and experts that believe that Cooper did not survive his escape. His daring jump from the Boeing 727 was fraught with danger, beginning with his attire. He was dressed in a business suit and loafers, far from ideal for a parachute jump, especially into a rugged, forested terrain. This clothing provided little protection against the elements or the potential impact of landing. The weather conditions on the night of the jump added to the peril. It was a cold, rainy November evening, with temperatures well below optimal for survival in a wilderness setting, especially without proper gear. The jump's approximate area, densely forested and featuring rough terrain in the Pacific Northwest, posed its own set of challenges. The region is known for its thick underbrush, steep cliffs, and deep bodies of water, all of which would have been difficult to navigate, especially at night and without preparation. Furthermore, the type of parachute Cooper chose, a military-style NB-8 back parachute, was not steerable, significantly reducing his ability to control his landing zone. This type of parachute, while reliable, provided little room for maneuvering, making a safe landing in such hazardous conditions even more unlikely. Yet with no body and no parachute ever found, it's hard to believe he did not walk out of that wilderness alive. Maybe not unscathed, but alive. In the aftermath of the hijacking, a series of tantalizing letters began to surface, adding an intriguing twist to the investigation. These letters, sent to various newspapers and law enforcement agencies, claimed to be from Cooper himself. Among them, at least 6 were noted for their distinctive styles, some typed, others handwritten, and a few using ransom-style cutout letters. While the FBI initially dismissed most as hoaxes, the last 2, which were withheld from the public until the 2000s, seemed to pique their interest significantly. Some investigators, like Tom Colbert and his team, believed that these letters contained hidden codes or messages. The FBI might have withheld these letters to explore these potential codes more thoroughly without public interference. The flurry of communications that had once offered a glimmer of hope in unraveling the mystery of Cooper's identity and whereabouts eventually gave way to silence. Months turned into years as the trail went cold. Then, in November 1978, a deer hunter found a 727's instruction placard for lowering the aft stairway. The placard was found near a logging road about 21 kilometers east of Castle Rock, Washington, north of Lake Merwin, but within Flight 305's basic flight path. But the biggest breakthrough would not come until nearly a decade after the infamous hijacking, rekindling the mystery. Along the banks of the Columbia River, near Vancouver, Washington, a young boy on a family outing stumbled upon a decaying package partially buried in the sand at Tina Bar. This package contained $5,800 in $20 bills, weathered and fragmented but still identifiable. Astonishingly, the serial numbers on the bills matched those of the ransom money given to Cooper. This unexpected find, not far from Flight 305's flight path, reignited speculation and theories about Cooper's fate and the route of his escape. Following the hijacking, the FBI's meticulous examination of the Boeing 727 yielded a collection of physical evidence left by D.B. Cooper. Despite his careful efforts to leave little trace, the following items were recovered: a black clip-on tie, a tie clip, 8 Raleigh cigarette butts, 2 plastic cups. The FBI was able to lift several unidentified fingerprints from the cabin, which were presumed to be Cooper's, though a definitive match was never made. Advanced forensic analysis conducted many years later revealed the presence of rare earth elements on the tie. These included particles of cerium, strontium sulfide, and pure titanium. Such materials were not commonly found and were often used in highly specialized applications like aerospace engineering or advanced manufacturing. This raised the possibility that Cooper had access to environments where such materials were common, such as a Boeing facility. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, Boeing faced significant economic challenges. This led to substantial layoffs in the company, notably in the Seattle area, which was home to a major Boeing facility. The theory of Cooper being a disgruntled ex-employee of Boeing is definitely plausible. In recent years, Eric Ulis, who calls himself one of the world's leading D.B. Cooper experts, says he's discovered an adjustable spindle in a tie that matches the one Cooper wore. He believes they can use ancestry genealogy to solve the case, though the FBI recently denied a request to examine the tie under FOIA. He is currently suing the FBI for access to it. A team of researchers, delving into the microscopic world, analyzed the ransom money previously found along the Columbia River. Embedded within were tiny deposits of algae known as diatoms. As amateur scientist Tom Kay revealed, they were a spring species, blooming not in November when Cooper jumped, but in the springtime. This revelation suggested a new timeline for the money's journey. Contrary to initial beliefs that the cash landed in the river shortly after Cooper's daring escape, the diatoms indicated a different story. The money had made its way into the river months later, well after the hijacking event. This finding challenged existing theories and opened new avenues of speculation.
It's still trust, but verify. It's still play, but cut the cards. It's still watch closely, and don't be afraid to see what you see.
Some claim to have known him, others have confessed to being him. It's as if Dan Cooper isn't just a suspect in a hijacking case. He's a character in a collective narrative, woven into the fabric of modern folklore. But often, these suspects are compelling, not just because they might fit the bill, but because they fit the story we want to believe. Everyone knows Dan Cooper, or at least, they think they do. He's become a canvas for our theories, our suspicions, and our imaginations. As we explore the suspects, we tread the fine line between fact and fiction, between what is likely and what is simply a more intriguing tale. In April 1972, just months after the infamous Cooper hijacking, Richard McCoy Jr. boarded a United Airlines flight, brandished a hand grenade, and demanded parachutes and a ransom of $500,000. McCoy's modus operandi mirrored Cooper's so closely that it seemed more than mere coincidence. He too jumped from the aft stairs of a 727 with the ransom, parachuting to safety. Police began investigating McCoy following a tip from a motorist. The driver had picked up McCoy hitchhiking at a fast food restaurant, where McCoy was wearing a jumpsuit and carrying a duffel bag. McCoy had also described to an acquaintance how easy it would be to carry out such a hijacking. McCoy used his access to the prison's dental office to fashion a fake handgun out of dental paste. He escaped on August 10, 1974, by commandeering a garbage truck and crashing it through the prison's main gate. He was later killed in a shootout with the FBI in 1974. Documents released in 2020 via the Freedom of Information Act revealed that as late as 2004, the FBI had still not completely cleared McCoy as a Cooper suspect and were attempting to discreetly obtain a DNA sample from McCoy's family. Dwayne Weber emerged as a suspect in the D.B. Cooper case in a rather dramatic fashion. His widow came forward with a startling claim. On his deathbed in 1995, Weber allegedly confessed to being Dan Cooper. This confession, coupled with a series of circumstantial evidences, sparked interest in his potential involvement in the hijacking. Weber had a criminal record and was reportedly in the Pacific Northwest around the time of the hijacking. His knowledge of the area, along with his criminal background, made him a plausible candidate for the elusive hijacker. Moreover, His widow recalled a knee injury he sustained around the time of the hijacking, which could have been consistent with an injury from a parachute jump. Despite these intriguing elements, the evidence against Duane Weber was largely anecdotal and circumstantial. The FBI investigated these claims but did not find conclusive evidence to firmly establish his role in the hijacking. As with many suspects in this case, the absence of definitive proof leaves Weber's involvement in the D.B. Cooper mystery as speculative. Ted Braden, a former Special Forces soldier known for his exceptional parachuting skills, emerged as a suspect in the D.B. Cooper case due to his military background and expertise in skydiving. Braden's experience in the Vietnam War, where he was recognized for his parachuting abilities, matched the skill set that would have been required for Cooper's infamous parachute escape. Braden's familiarity with covert operations and his capability to execute high-risk maneuvers made him a figure of interest in the investigation. Despite his ability as a soldier, he was not well liked personally. A family member described him as the perfect combination of high intelligence and criminality, adding a layer of intrigue to his profile. However, despite his potential to carry out such a daring act, there was no direct evidence linking Braden to the Cooper hijacking. His involvement in the case remains speculative. In a striking development in November 2018, the Oregonian spotlighted William J. Smith, a Bloomfield, New Jersey native, as a potential suspect. This intriguing theory emerged from the detailed research of an Army data analyst, which was subsequently forwarded to the FBI in mid-2018. A compelling aspect of Smith's profile was his deep resentment towards the airline industry, blamed for the railroad's decline. His detailed understanding of airplanes and refueling operations, coupled with his familiarity with the Seattle area and his discreet lifestyle, further fueled suspicions. Smith's connection to the Cooper case was accentuated by a childhood acquaintance, Ira Daniel Cooper, whose name was strikingly similar to the alias used by the hijacker. Moreover, Smith's expertise with knots and his ability to navigate terrain using maps indicated a capacity to execute such a daring escape. Lynn Doyle Cooper, commonly referred to as L.D. Cooper, came into the spotlight as a suspect in the D.B. Cooper case, largely due to a family connection. His niece, recalling conversations from her childhood, suggested that L.D. Cooper might be the infamous hijacker. She noted his discussions about a similar plot and his familiarity with the area where the hijacking occurred. L.D. Cooper was a logger and outdoorsman, familiar with the Pacific Northwest terrain, which played a crucial role in the hijacking saga. This background, coupled with his physical resemblance to the composite sketch of D.B. Cooper, fueled speculation about his involvement. However, despite these intriguing leads, the evidence against L.D. Cooper was largely circumstantial. The FBI conducted an investigation into these claims, but found no direct evidence linking him to the hijacking. As with many suspects in this case, the lack of concrete proof leaves L.D. Cooper's involvement as a subject of speculation. Consider this. In the absence of any concrete evidence, the real Dan Cooper could step forward and confess, yet his admission would likely be just another pin on the vast board of suspects. It becomes increasingly clear how each new theory, while intriguing, adds complexity rather than clarity to the narrative. In a recent and remarkable revelation, Ralph Ammerman, an air traffic controller who oversaw the hijacked flight, has come forward with crucial information that he believes was neglected by the FBI during their initial investigation. Ammerman disclosed to the U.S. Sun a peculiar incident that occurred the night before the infamous skyjacking. According to his account, an observer reported seeing someone dropping flares from a plane near Cottage Grove, southeast of Eugene. Intriguingly, there was a reported sighting of flares around the same time an area where Cooper is believed to have made his audacious parachute jump. This aligns with an earlier, often overlooked detail from the hijacking. Also, Schaffner's description of the dynamite matched the color of the Northwest Airlines uniforms, a coral red. This has been thought to more resemble highway flares than actual dynamite. It seems unlikely the Air Force trailing the 727 would miss this, but it is plausible. It's clear that this case is full of conflicting accounts and confusing leads. From the very beginning, the FBI faced obstacles and made mistakes that impacted the investigation. These early missteps left us with a mystery that's even more puzzling today than it was back then. On a personal note, I find myself grappling with a peculiar sentiment, a hope that Dan Cooper remains an unsolved mystery. In a crime that claimed no victims, there's a part of the story that resonates with the allure of the unknown, the allure of the perfect escape. Maybe, just maybe, Cooper has earned his place in history as the one who got away.
Forget all your cares, so go downtown. Things will be great when you're downtown. No finer place for sure downtown. Everything's waiting for you.
Curio.